With the 15th pick and with the 26th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the Washington Redskins select Dwayne Haskins, Montez Sweat.
Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sistren. I am your man and resident Redskins fan, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the Redskins Report. So, as the Redskins continue with the trend of being very active in free agency, you may not love the moves that they're making. They may not be high-profile moves, but they continue to be active in free agency. And I think I'm going to do another video because last night I was actually having a couple of glasses of wine, and I thought about doing a show called Thinking and Drinking, or Drinking and Thinking. Whichever way you want to put it, because I did a lot of thinking last night. I had a really good idea, or should I say, a way of kind of fetching out what's been done in free agency to this point for the Redskins. Like, I think I've come up with an explanation and maybe a thought process behind what has been done. And I could be way off base, but I think I'll do another video on that. What I really want to focus in on now is the continued activity of this Redskins football team. I've talked about this on various videos, especially the one that I did prior to this one, that the Redskins in the first 4 days of free agency, the 2 tampering days leading up to free agency, and the first 2 days of free agency have really been active. 3 the first day, 2 the next day, 3 more, the day after, and now another 2 for the Redskins. I think it was a total of 8 guys coming into day number 2 of free agency. And the Redskins went out and got 2 more players to add to the mix in offensive tackle Cornelius Lucas. Never, ever trust a man with 2 first names, okay? So I don't trust him. But Cornelius Lucas from the Chicago Bears, formerly of the Detroit Lions as well. And they went out and got Logan Thomas, tight end from the Detroit Lions as well. So went shopping at the NFC North store, picked up a couple of items. Can't really tell you much about either one of these items. I know Logan Thomas a lot more than I know Cornelius Lucas. I can't tell you anything about Cornelius Lucas. All I can tell you is that what other people have said sounds like he could be a pretty good prospect. He's young still. Here, it's a guy that was a backup in Chicago, but when called upon, played really well for the Chicago Bears. And it sounds like a guy that, if given an opportunity to continue to play and grow in this league, he may be able to be a serviceable starter. Maybe, if not, worst case scenario, he is a, essential piece of your rotation in terms of a backup. Right now, we're not sure if we have a swing tackle on this roster or not. I mean, we really wanted Jerron Christian Sr. to work out, and maybe he ultimately will. But right now, it doesn't seem like that's the case. Looks like the Redskins whiffed on that 3rd round pick. But, it is what it is at this point, and you can't cry over spilt milk. What you have to do is try to put yourself in the best positions to be able to circumvent injuries throughout the course of the season. And whether Cornelius Lucas is a starter or he is a swing tackle ready to come in when pressed into action, it doesn't really matter. You need these guys on an NFL roster. And it looks like the Redskins have been stockpiling them throughout the first few days of free agency. So we'll see what Cornelius Lucas brings to the table. Sounds like he's a really interesting tackle, a guy that could potentially start for you. And it'll be interesting to see what happens, man. I don't really know what to make of this signing because he's more of a right tackle than he is a left tackle. But again, I mean, Morgan Moses, his deal is, you can get out of it after next year. Maybe they're kind of looking a little bit, towards the future because this is a 2-year deal for Cornelius Lucas. And if he's able to show them something over these, next 2 seasons, and let's say Morgan Moses, and God forbid anything happen, matter of fact, let's knock on a little bit of wood here. But I know a lot of you want to run Morgan out of town, and I've already told you guys to stop it. Don't create holes that you don't have. All right, look, you can do a hell of a lot worse than Morgan Moses. Is he the best right tackle in football? Absolutely not. Is he the worst? No, Absolutely not. So far from it, as a matter of fact. So look, you may want to upgrade that position, and it's fine to want to upgrade positions, but understand that this is not a need that we have. We have plenty of them on the roster. That is not one of them. Let's not make it one. So if something were to occur where Morgan Moses gets injured, can't play, or for whatever reason, Cornelius Lucas is thrusted into the fire and actually shows well, they may be able to save some money by moving on from Morgan Moses. They may not move on from Morgan Moses. I'm not advocating that they do, like some of you out there. I just know that, this is a deal that isn't going to cost you a lot of money, similar to the rest of the deals that have been signed this free agency period. Not going to cost you a lot of money, only $5.3 million over 2 years for Cornelius Lucas. But if he comes in, plays really well, it's cheap labor. You may be able to move on from a guy that has a relatively high cap number in Morgan Moses. So we'll see what happens. You still have an issue at left tackle. I don't know if Cornelius Lucas is capable of playing left tackle. I do know that Donald Penn is out there. He says he wants to play. He does not plan on retiring. He is very open to coming back to the Redskins. So there's always a fallback plan if necessary. But if Lucas can play both left and right, you may not need to go that route. You may just need to plug in Cornelius Lucas and keep it moving and see what happens. I still expect the Redskins to do something via the draft, especially if they feel like Jerron Christian isn't the guy that can at least give you swing tackle ability. He may have to be this year because you don't have any other options, especially if you don't get anything in the draft. But if the Redskins are able to get a guy they really like in the draft, then Cornelius Lucas may be able to stay a backup, have him as a swing tackle, move on from Jerron Christian, and now you've got a guy that you can plug and play from the draft. Again, all of these things are tentative and really up to the discretion of the Redskins as to how they decide to move forward, attacking each position of need on this roster. But Cornelius Lucas is an interesting case, and I want to see what he is able to provide for this football team. Now, Logan Thomas is a guy that I'm very familiar with, being a member of the DMV, that the V in DMV standing for Virginia. He went to Virginia Tech. That's one of the, it's not really local, but it's because there's nothing close here that's big. We tend to lift up the bigger schools around here. So Virginia Tech are always going to be on a mantle around these parts. And so he was the quarterback at Virginia Tech for one point, got drafted in the league by the Cardinals. I really wanted to see him do well. I remember Mike Mayock saying the famous line, he wants to see who can put Humpty Dumpty back together again, essentially talking about all of the talent that Logan Thomas had, but as a quarterback, that is. But it's going to take a lot of work. This guy was going to be a project. The Cardinals took on that project with Bruce Arians. It did not work. And so he ended up making the switch to tight end as he became a Buffalo Bill, made a career out of it, ended up going to Detroit last year on a one-year deal, did some good things, but didn't do enough to be retained in Detroit. Now he finds himself in Washington. Here's a guy that is still learning the nuances of the position, a guy that is extremely raw, but he's big and he has the ability to do everything you need him to do. Again, to me, he's no more than a tight end two, probably more along the lines of a third option at tight end. So the Redskins are not done at tight end. I don't know if they're going to do anything else in free agency at tight end. I have heard reports that the Redskins are interested in Delanie Walker, that the Titans veteran, ex-Titans veteran tight end that was released. And looking into that situation, I don't know if the Redskins are going to ultimately decide to do that or not, but I can tell you this much. That would be a guy that I would be interested in. And even if you were to get a Delanie Walker, I still would want to bring a guy in. I think the Redskins are done in free agency at the tight end position, believe it or not. I think they're going to now turn their attention to the draft and see if they can't find themselves a young tight end. And look, where they'll be looking to acquire a tight end because they have 2 fourth-round picks and a 5th, that's the sweet spot in this draft for the tight end position. I think they'll start really coming off the board in the 3rd round, and through the 3rd through the 5th is where I think you're going to see the bulk of the tight ends in this draft come off the board. There'll be a sprinkle of guys that come off the board in the 2nd round, maybe 2 or 3 that are worthy of a 2nd round pick potentially. But to me, for the most part, rounds 3 through 5 are where all the tight ends are going to come off the board. The Redskins have 2 selections in the 4th round, a 3rd round, and a 5th round selection. So the meat of their draft is in rounds 3 through 5. I don't see any way the Redskins don't come away with at least one tight end in that mix out of those 4 picks. So, and again, that's subject to change. The Redskins could add additional picks depending on what happens with Trent Williams. That situation has not been resolved yet. We could look up and the Redskins could have an additional 2 third-rounders to go with the one they already have, and 2 more fourths and a 5th, and all of a sudden you're looking up in the meat and potato rounds of this draft, rounds 3 through 5, and the Redskins could easily have 6 draft picks in the span of 3 rounds. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, with that Trent Williams situation. I would much prefer to be in a position to get another 2 than a couple of 3s. But if you told me I was getting 2 3s instead of a 2, and one of those 3s was relatively high, I'd be on board with that at this point. I'm ready for resolution and ready to move on from the whole Trent Williams situation. So Logan Thomas, to me, extremely raw. Not really what you would call a polished product by any stretch of the imagination. A guy that I think has a limited ceiling, in this league as a tight end. But, it's not to say that he can't get better. But how much better is he going to get is the real question. I think he's a guy that, as I just mentioned, at best, a tight end number 2 option, a TE2, but I think he's more along the lines of a TE3. Well, we've already got a couple of TE3s on the roster, so I'm not that moved by the signing of Logan Thomas. So, again, the Redskins may ultimately just decide, all right, got a young tight end that we're going to try to develop in Logan Thomas, going to draft another one that we're going to try to develop, and then we got a couple of young guys fighting for the 3rd. I just wanted one veteran in the mix. Feels like you got the blind leading the blind right now. There isn't a veteran presence on this roster at the tight end position, and I'm not comfortable with that. It's the reason why I was open to Greg Olsen. It's the reason I'm open to Delaney Walker. I would like a veteran on this roster. Now, if they don't go out and get a veteran, that's fine too. I mean, it'll be right in line with the young man movement that we have going on in Washington right now anyhow. And let's face it, If I'm a veteran out there and I'm looking to win, Washington probably isn't the place I'm looking to go. It's the reason why I don't think guys like Emmanuel Sanders and even a Delaney Walker or a Greg Olsen are really good fits here. Because if you're looking to win, if you haven't won a championship and you're getting into the twilight years of your career and you're looking around at opportunities that may present themselves to give you a chance to win, the Redskins aren't one that looks like it's going to be winning here in the near future, at least not in the upcoming season, maybe even 2 before they're ready to compete at a high level. So if I'm an aging veteran with only 2 or 3 years left of good football, I don't know if I want to spend them in Washington. And it's not like we're out here paying people money hand over fist anymore. That's not what we're doing. So it's not like you're at least going to get a major payday, So I don't even know if a guy like Delaney Walker is interested in coming here. I don't know if the Redskins have interest in him. So at the end of the day, the Redskins added 2 more players that could make this roster, could not make this roster. None of their money is that daunting that you can't get out of the contract. If these guys are outperformed by an undrafted rookie or somebody else on the roster that they thought was going to end up getting cut, and they actually step their game up and show the ability to compete at a high level and take strides to get better and outwork one of these guys that they've signed. Every single, as I've mentioned already, even though I don't anticipate most of these guys getting cut, every single one of these guys, with the exception of Kendall Fuller and probably the safety out of Pittsburgh, Sean Davis, just about every guy that we signed, and Wes Schweitzer, let me amend that and add him in there. With the exception of Schweitzer, Kendall Fuller, and probably Sean Davis, every single one of the other guys we've signed could be cut before the season starts. Their contract suggests that. It's not a lot of money that you would be eating. You're not going to be on the hook for any guarantees if they're not on the roster week 1. For a lot of these guys, the guaranteed money that they're getting, it's peanuts in the grand scheme of things. So The Redskins aren't signing massive deals, and a lot of these guys aren't guaranteed to make this roster, to be honest with you. And these two signings aren't any different. They're not dissimilar. But I think they brought Cornelius Lucas on this roster to make the football team. I don't see him going anywhere. But Logan Thomas could not make this football team. I can tell you that right now. He's no lock to make this team. I think Kevin Pierre-Louis is going to be here, but he's no lock. He's no guarantee to make this football team. Injury in camp, and that's to say we even have camp, but he gets injured early in camp. Let's knock on wood here. I don't wish that on anyone. But injury early in camp, and he can't perform, and then we draft a guy in the 6th or 7th round, and he plays some good ball. Boop, there goes Kevin Pierre-Louis. There goes his roster spot. So I'm just saying, the Redskins continue to go with the money ball approach. I've got a theory here. I want to share that with you guys a little bit later on, but in any event, Redskins add 2 more football players to the mix. Still waiting to see if they do anything at the wide receiver position. But outside of receiver, they've pretty much addressed all of the holes that we've had on this roster going into the offseason. Now, again, address them how? All right? With what kind of quality? That's the real question. All right? But nonetheless, we talked about needing a tight end. Well, they added a tight end. It may not be one that's a true difference maker, but they added a tight end. We talked about safety. They added a safety. Don't know how good he's going to be for us, but they added a safety. Talked about offensive line help. Well, they added a guard and a tackle. Don't know how good either one of those guys are going to be, but they added guys at that position. All right. Linebacker. We talked about linebacker. What are the Redskins going to do at middle linebacker, outside linebacker? Well, they've added backers for days in this free agency period. So as you look at the Redskins, there are only a couple of positions that they haven't addressed via free agency. Backup quarterback, again, is Alex Smith going to play or not? Right now, you would think they know something that we don't. You can wait on the quarterback position. Those backups that are out there aren't going anywhere. I think you're going to see the Redskins address that at some point. And I'm still waiting on a veteran wide receiver. If you're going to go that route, there are a bunch of guys. The wide receiver market has really been unscathed. It really has been untouched. Outside of Amari Cooper and Randall Cobb getting signed, not a lot of receivers have come off the board. There are plenty of receivers. As a matter of fact, that market is still relatively untouched. So it'll be interesting to see if the Redskins decide to go sniffing around some of these wide receivers. Bashad Perryman is still there. You've still got Robbie Anderson, Demarcus Robinson. A lot of the guys that I thought would have been signed already haven't been. So I'm interested to see. Emmanuel Sanders is still out there, although I think he's going to end up in Dallas. There's a lot of guys still available as wide receivers in this league. I want to see if the Redskins decide to do something there as well. But I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage it could be. And I am a Redskins fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Redskins spirit will never die. Redskins spirit will never fold until we meet again. Hail to our beloved Washington Redskins. If anything big breaks, including a Trent Williams trade, you know where to find me. But outside of that, I'll just let the Redskins continue to do what they've done. I'll drop that video that I've been teasing throughout this video a little bit later on at some point today. And I'm looking forward to your comments in the comment section of this video and future videos as we continue to watch free agency wear on and pass, and then start to refocus our attention on the draft. But free agency not done yet. We'll see what happens. A lot of huge dominoes still out there left to fall. A lot of big names still out there. We'll see what happens, and if the Redskins decide to add a couple more players to what has been a very active free agency period to this point. I'm your man, Louie T. I'm going to glide to the side and allow you guys to enjoy the rest of your weekend. Stay safe out there, as I've mentioned before, and we'll chop it up a little bit later on. Trust me, this is not the last time you'll see my face. So enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you guys soon.
Louie T Network.